There we go. I wonder if Jenny looks to maybe still be frozen. I'm not sure where she is. She's somewhere and she's having some internet issues, possibly. We see her kind of shaking her head. Is she gonna? Can you hear us, Jenny? She doesn't know. She doesn't know if she can hear us. She doesn't know if she can hear us. Let's see. Let's give her one more second here. I'm excited today. I can't wait to have Charles on here to talk about the Oklahoma City bombing. This is something I think that's always near and dear to every Oklahoman's heart, and I can't wait to talk about this. Jenny, I guess Jenny just has no audio. Can you hear me at all, Jenny? Yes, no, maybe. All right. Well, we'll just leave Jenny on there. We'll go ahead and there she is. There she is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea if this is. I have literally. My husband says the internet's fine. I'm like, well, it's not on my computer. I have no idea what's going on this morning.
Yeah. Well, and then there's streaming issues on some of those platforms also. It's just one of those days. I think maybe the bad boys in this world don't want us talking today. Maybe that's what it is.
You have to wonder if this is just so bizarre. I mean, Lisa's like, where is everyone? It's like, I don't know. I don't even know where I am this morning, Lisa.
Yeah.
I can't make it work. Holy cow. What is going on?
Yeah. You may, are you at your house? Where are you?
I am at my house, but I'm in the room that I was going to make the office. Remember, I was going to try to move downstairs from upstairs because I got
Yeah.
sick of walking up and downstairs. So I was like, oh, Kelly's on this morning.
Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Jenny Michael. Yeah, if we can make this thing stay, and then Charles couldn't get his. Did he finally get his?
Well, he did.
Program up?
I know he's down there waiting, but he did get it loaded at one point, and then it came off. So I think he does have it loaded. Unless that's
Well, we may.
Is that your screen on there, or is that Charles? Is that Charles' screen on there?
Which screen?
The outside the popular narrative, isn't that from Charles?
No, that's our title screen. That's our title screen.
Oh, okay.
Our title slide. So I don't know. This has been the most bizarre morning.
Well, I will tell Charles one thing. Charles, if you can hear me, over on the right side of your screen, there's a private chat. Type your email address in that private chat. It'll come to me, and I'll send you a link. And then you can just drop your presentation in that link. It'll come to me, and then I'll get it on the screen. While we're starting to talk.
Yeah, it's like, what is going on today? I don't remember us having this many problems in forever. Have you?
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, no, just one of those crazy deals.
No idea. And so I wore all of my, my 4th of July, Independence Day. Well, that was another thing. People say 4th of July all the time, right? Happy 4th of July. Do you know that you could literally go to stand outside some mall or a big store and ask people what 4th of July was, and they go, it's a day to shoot off fireworks? I'm serious. I'll bet you $10 per person you ask. It'd be like, it's just a day. Oh.
About firecrackers.
I kind of wonder about that today. I was actually telling David yesterday, I'm wondering if we're going to have a Catholic priest come in and de-exorcise the house or something. This is very weird.
Uh-oh. Charles. Something happened to Charles.
Uh-oh. So he's off altogether now?
Well, it happened to him just a little bit ago also. He kind of popped off and then he got right back on. I'm not sure if he's having internet issues also.
Yeah, and when I look at Rumble, we are way behind on Rumble. Like, we're so far behind. It's very weird. And I'm about to spill my coffee on my... Yeah, this whole morning has gotten really wackadoo. No idea. Are you still working trying to get on his...
Yeah, I just sent it to him. So we'd go ahead and bring him on whenever you're ready. And
all right.
But I
ready,
will.
Charles? Do what?
Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to bring something up on
okay,
on my
side.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I've been asking if you can hear me, but I guess you had me turned off. Is that what?
Yeah, we didn't have you on the screen yet.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I got in and back. I mean, out and back in. I can try this. While we were hung up, I actually got it to pull up at one of those screens, and then as I've had to reboot or whatever, it's not pulling up. But let me try it one more time.
Yeah, I thought I saw you get it loaded in one time.
This is really weird.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's see.
I mean, like, really weird. Like somebody's dinking with this. Because we've not had that with any, and he's gone again.
No, he's here. I added something. I want to, Jenny. I want to read one quote here that I think encapsulates maybe both of us and our audience and people that are on here in celebration of 4th of July with Thomas Jefferson, no less. I mean,
okay.
I try to literally live by this quote words, the sworn upon the altar of God. For I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. I mean, I try to live that literally in every single decision that I make every day.
So say that one more time.
For I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man.
I love that.
Thomas Jefferson.
I love that. You
Thank
need to
you,
send me
America.
that. I need to put it up on the Liberty, Oklahoma website.
Yeah.
So it acts like it just uploaded that PowerPoint, but I can't tell. I guess you can't see it, can you?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah. See there, we got it. So you can,
Okay, good.
You can go through that.
Okay. Wow. I hope I know how to push the button to move to the next slide. Is that pretty simple?
Well, I hope we'll just stay up.
Yeah, I'll just put it up. We'll just leave it up there.
Okay. How do you do that? Maybe you go back. Let me try this real quick.
All right. While you're doing that, I'm going to put this up from Lisa because I think this is
You can click them on the left side or however you want to do it on your side, Charles, but you're in control now. So
okay, but I'm looking to see where to control it. I really don't know. Let me ask you this real quick. Did you see this change right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like I've got to go to the PowerPoint to change it, which is fine.
Well, that would make sense because if you're just doing a screen share, then that would make sense because you're operating your own PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want me to leave this up or to go down? What do we do next?
Leave it up, but I would do, you know how you can make it full screen on your PowerPoint, like you're actually doing the program. That's what I would do.
Okay. It appears to be that maybe I need to
go up to view up at the top, the second one from the right. Go to view on your PowerPoint.
On my PowerPoint.
In the menu up there.
In your menu at the top. See it? Okay, go to view. Okay, now go to where it says, I'm having trouble reading. Can you read it, Michael?
Fit to window.
You should. That should work. Try that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't ever use PowerPoint.
I use PowerPoint all the time, but I can't try. Oh, go up to slideshow. Go up to slideshow. Up there, right there. What? Back over.
Right.
Back over to the right. Right.
Yep.
Slideshow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
From the beginning, maybe.
Yeah.
Do what?
So click on from the beginning, the one at the very left side. Click on from the beginning. That should do it.
Okay. It gave me a bigger screen. Does it look good on your side?
It's not. That's very weird.
Yeah.
I'm just can't even conceive it. But let's just go with that because we're never going to make it apparently today. It's a wild day.
Yep. Sign of the times.
It's about to get a lot wilder, Jenny. It's about to get wilder.
Are we talking about 4th of July or do you guys know something I don't know?
No.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about the bombing.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. And to point out again, Lisa said every country has a 4th of July. Only the United States of America has Independence Day on July 4th. So that's bing, bing, bing. All right. Do you want to go ahead and let's just go, Charles?
Yeah.
While we have internet and everything else.
I'm ready.
All right, go.
What do I do?
Now, well, I want to preface something, Jenny, before Charles gets started. Now, Charles, you were a legislator, correct, during the time of the Oklahoma City bombing?
Correct.
So
in the Democrat majority, by the way.
Yeah. So you were kind of front and center with anything and everything that would have been happening. You would have been privy, kind of, I think, probably across the board about anything with the state that would have been happening, more so than just me at the time when I was living in Guyman, Oklahoma. You probably had access to a lot more information on what was happening than I did.
Yeah, and so you want me to kind of start there and go forward?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys just stop me if you want me to clarify something or go somewhere else or something. Yeah, I was elected in 86, served from 87 to 98, then served again later when the Republicans became the majority. So the bombing happens, and I was I'm an insurance agent. So I was in my insurance office with another agent and my secretary, and they had been there for a little while, about 8:30 in the morning from about 8 or so. We're sitting down having a cup of coffee talking. And in this small 2-story office building, our offices were kind of in the middle of it. And the landlord had said, we're going to have some new air conditioning systems put up on the top of the building in the next week or two, and blah, blah, blah. So we're sitting there having coffee, and we hear this boom, boom, like that. Or maybe it's a little bit closer, boom, boom. And we looked at each other, and it shook the building and everything, like everybody experienced that.
Wow.
And we looked at each other and said, hey, I guess they're getting ready to put the heat and air conditioning system up on the roof. Well, yeah, I guess that's it. So we talked for a little bit, and then just in a few minutes, my LA secretary at the Capitol called me and said, hey, are you watching what's going on? And I said, well, no. She said, well, there's some explosion gone off downtown, et cetera, et cetera. You got to get down here pretty quick. So I jump in the car and head down that way, listen to the radio on the way down. I'm coming in that east side where the house parking lot is, going in the steps with just me and another guy. It was a longtime lobbyist for the firefighters named Pete Stavros. Really good guy, highly respected by everyone. We're walking up and we're going, hey, what do you think? And just what everybody else is doing. I wonder what this is all about. And he said, I think it's a gas explosion, which a lot of people were saying that. And I said, I don't know. For some reason, I just said, I don't know. I've got a feeling it's worse than that or something else. We went on in. Legislature went in session. Kevin Cox, who had been there for a long time, had been down there and was lucky he wasn't hurt. Took his son to a daycare. And when the explosion happened, he described how he almost lost control of his vehicle because of the power of it. He was right down there fairly close, et cetera, et cetera. And man, he was almost like a hyperventilating person, because I think the speaker, somebody said, well, Kevin, come up here and tell us what you've experienced so far. And he was like just breathing really hyper, which is not unusual or surprising by any means, but it really affected him. And then they shut that down and brought bomb sniffing dogs in, and the rest is history, as we say. But I started having questions like just about, I say everyone, many, many, many people did as the years have gone by, and we've talked to so many people and done so many presentations. People had questions right off the bat. A lot of those came from people that were in the military, for example, or had some other practical application of using explosive devices for mining or something like that. I've had so many military people and people such as that talk to me over the years about they had questions about the supposed bomb or bombs, that the bomb that was used in the truck was we couldn't have done that damage. And so I'm going to start there by making a statement, and then we'll just keep going forward. We had the benefit when we created this report, which is 555 pages long, about 105-page appendix. We had about a whole bunch of experts. I think we used 8 in the book. One of them was, these are heavy hitter guys. One of them was Sam Cohen, who was the inventor of the neutron bomb. And he was going to come to Oklahoma City when I had this press conference in June, but he got stuck in LA because of the Unabomber. The Unabomber had made some threat and it shut down the LA airport, and he couldn't fly out to have this press conference. But he made the statement, and the NBC affiliate in LA interviewed him, and they ran it all weekend for several days, the continuing coverage of this press conference that we had. And in his words, he said, look, I've read General Ben Parton's report about the bombing, which he had sent out created a report. He's one of the world's experts, this general that I'm referring to. He said, I agree with him 100%. He said it couldn't happen. And he said, it doesn't matter how big that bomb of ammonium nitrate was. it couldn't have done that type of damage to the building. So you had people like that. So I'm going to back up and go right from there. What I did is I started looking into things. I started asking questions of people like my father, who'd been in television all of his life. I told him what I was thinking was going on. He happened to know someone at a television station that had done a documentary on Waco right after it happened. And they did a controversial one like I did on the bombing. He said, why don't you, I'll introduce you to them. Why don't you go talk to them and ask them what their experience was like? And I did. And they described kind of what I went through, get ready for all kinds of hell to come your way. And so, sorry about the dogs. And so what happened was, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. A dog barks and I forget everything. So I talked to a number of people. I finally decided I was going to move forward. I met Glenn and Kathy Wilburn, who were speaking out. They are grandparents of two little boys that died in the bombing, and they were very vocal, along with the mother, their daughter. And so I met with them, met a number of people, and decided to have a press conference. And so I just referred to that. I had this press conference. I believe the date was June 30th of 95. Before I did that, I called the governor's office, who Keating was the governor, and talked to his chief of staff, who was a guy named Clinton Key, no relation to me. I called the majority leader and the speaker of the House, who were Democrats. And I said, look, I just want you guys to know what I'm getting ready to do, et cetera, et cetera. And at that press conference, we were supposed to have Sam Cohen, which I just mentioned him. But at the press conference, there was also Galen Windsor, came out of Colorado. I think it was Denver, somewhere is where he lived. He was one of the inventors of the atomic bomb. He was part of the Manhattan Project.
Oh, wow.
We also had Ted Gunderson, who was not just a longtime FBI agent, but he was in charge of the LA office. I think the other one was Houston or Dallas. He had been around and done it all for a long time and overseen these larger offices and been involved in lots of things that he began to talk about over the years, like satanic worship, child sacrifice, and a lot of real bizarre, crazy stuff. And so he's been attacked, when he is brought up, but he is a very knowledgeable guy, and he just happens to know lots of stuff and decided that he needed to talk about it.
And well, why has he been attacked? I'm just curious.
Well, because, when you're going to be attacked, if you're talking about a subject like this and pointing the accusing finger at the government for covering it up or being complicit in some way or another. And so that was the same thing he was bringing up, because he did what others have said. He said it couldn't have happened that way. And he put his own report out. And somebody dropped it on my desk. So somebody at the Capitol dropped Ted Gunderson's report. Now, he had another type of bomb that he suggested was what they probably used. But so I had this on my desk. I also had General Ben Parton. He has been called by other experts as the world's expert on how bombs work, because he conducted unbelievable amount of testing for the government and military on bombing structures and just determining and just finding out how they work and how they don't work. So they would build concrete reinforced structures and all kinds of things, and then proceed to blow them up and bomb them with different kinds of explosives, et cetera, et cetera. So he was called a expert's expert. So Ted Gunderson, this longtime FBI agent and bureau chief, General Ben Parton, U.S. Air Force, and Galen Windsor is another one, and I'm probably forgetting one other person there.
What? And General Parton, I think from what I've read, Charles, he literally in the Air Force, he created those ballistic missiles. He was part of the engineering team or part of all that. So this is a guy that knows ballistics, demolition, and all. This is like someone to not be, you want to talk about an expert's expert. It's got to be, General Parton's got to be one of the foremost, I would think.
Yeah, and there's one of our other experts in the report was a guy named Roger Rawback, very extensive work at that time. It was 30 years later. He's even more if he's still alive, in mining up in Idaho or Montana or somewhere, and I talked a lot with him. They all gave us papers and written documents stating their position. And he's the one that told me when I was talking to him on the phone, I said, well, what do you, I've been talking to General Ben Parton and this person and that person. What do you think about General Parton? He said, oh, Parton is the expert's expert. Everybody looks up to him and knows him. So I had other people tell me that. We also had, now we're at that press conference. So we have this press conference. And I'm getting up and I'm saying, we've got problems here. The government's covering some of this up. And these experts are saying there's no way an ammonium nitrate bomb, even if you used jet fuel, which they started saying, well, we think they primed it up even more by using jet fuel. Look, here's one thing I've said every time I've given this presentation hundreds of times. I'm the type of person, I don't like the science. I wouldn't know much about these kind of things. You could tell me that it blew the building up and I would probably say, okay, whatever, I'd just go on. I may or may not have questions. So I was not questioning things at that time the way we've turned out, the way we ended up doing with this report and our investigation, because I didn't think people would really be able to grasp this science part. Damage to the building, how explosive devices work, because that's the way I was. And a lot of people are like that. They just want somebody to tell them what happened. So what we had people, these experts saying there's no way, it wouldn't matter if you put jet fuel in there. It wouldn't matter. And so what we've done, in addition to these experts, I'm going to kind of dive off on these side roads a little bit on this subject now that we're talking about the science, the damage to the building, and how that works. We also have the benefit of many other terrorist attacks on buildings over time. And at that time, we had 3 of them that we put in the bombing. One of them was the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia, that people might remember that name. And what happened is some terrorists, I forget who they were, they pulled up this big tanker truck, which you put fuel in, a real long one full of diesel fuel and and ammonium nitrate. Pulled it up to this building real similar to the Murrah building, big tall building, and blew it up, and it just blew the face off that building. It didn't damage any of the pillars, the header beams, nothing like that at all. And I had one of our experts tell me as we talked about that, he said, and there's some others, I'm going to mention a couple of other ones. He said in these foreign countries and third world countries especially, or second world countries, the quality of construction is not anything near to what we have here in the United States typically. And he said, for example, you could take a wooden pencil, and grind it into some of those walls. You might have to work at it a little bit, but you could actually grind into that concrete. So making the point that that explosion didn't do the type of damage to that building like we see at the Murrah building. There's also another one in Bogota, Colombia, which was a foreign mission. I think it was the U.S. and they pulled up a bomb in front of that same kind of bomb, ammonium nitrate, blew part of the windows out and some of the face of it off. Does not hurt the header beams or the columns, and does not bring a building down. We'll also remember the one in Lebanon where they drove a truck right into this building underneath it and set it off, killed a bunch of Marines. But same thing, it doesn't have the power. And here's a real simple way I like to describe this to people. So for anyone that's listening that, is still trying to get a handle on this, playing with fireworks and stuff over the years and when I was growing up, I remember, if you think about taking a black cat firecracker, now this is a real simple analogy, but it really does apply. And you took a small styrofoam coffee cup and you laid the black cat firecracker right up next to that cup on a table or wherever, and you set it off, it would just push that cup a little bit. That's what the power would have. But if you took a rubber band and you strapped it onto that cup, or you took tape and you taped it onto that cup, then when you set that firecracker off, it's going to blow a hole in it. And that's the same kind. That's why they take demolition and they go inside a building, they'll drill holes into columns and header beams or wherever and do a demolition and take buildings down, because it requires that. So how do you get that done? You can't do it with ammonium nitrate. So when we see the damage to that building, the experts tell us, and I've never seen one expert on the government side or anywhere that's tried to argue the other side of this issue. Never. I heard one on a radio show one time, and he didn't go anywhere near in depth. They weren't really refuting this. They weren't really digging into it. But he said, "Oh, the government knows what they're doing," and blah blah blah. But no one's ever said and put their credibility on the line to say, "Here's how it could work," or "Here's an example of how this would work." So this is a big smoking gun, and I'll take a break right there as we move to the next.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you a question, Charles. Can you just, for people that really have no idea, just kind of recap that timeline of, okay, so the bombing happened, kind of when did you start asking questions? When did you kind of form your committee or whatever it was? And then when did all these experts start coming in? I mean, was it immediately? Did they just hear about, like, how did all that kind of coalesce and come together?
Yeah, there's so much here. It's an interesting deal. So to communicate this. So yeah, I started asking questions pretty much immediately, privately, not out loud, not in public, and talking to people, et cetera, et cetera. And some of those were legislators and all kinds of people. Everybody had questions. Many people did. And so I went down the path. So I had the press conference in June of 95. Some other things that were going on then is that in August, the defense attorneys for both Nichols and McVeigh did press conferences and talked about different things. Also, there was the federal grand jury, which is always in place in the jurisdictions they're in. And they were looking at this also. You had a guy named Hoppy Heidelberg was one of those jurors.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know about him. He was a colorful guy, passed away a few years back, but he was one that would ask questions, and he asked questions in that federal grand jury, and he kept asking questions. Why can't we bring in some experts here to talk to us? Why can't we get in this info, that info? And then there was a rumor of a young woman, which we can talk about some more as we go along here, named Carol Howe, who was an informant for the ATF that had real high charged information related to the Oklahoma City bombing. And so this was circulating with some of the press as we were doing our thing. And I'm answering your question. I'm getting to the bottom line here. And so she gets outed, and Hoppy Heidelberg is asking these questions. He throws another question to the prosecutors. They get tired of it. They say, "Mr. Heidelberg, if you just submit your questions to the presiding judge, that would be better." So he sent a letter to the judge and said, "Hey, why don't we get this Carol Howe? Why don't we get this person, this information?" The response he got from the judge, I think his name was Kimball, David Kimball, if I remember right. He said, "Dear Mr. Heidelberg, you are no longer a member of the grand jury. You're dismissed.
Wow.
If you bring up any questions about or any issues of what you've discussed or talked or heard or anything, you'll be charged for each individual item, blah, 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 blah. So shut up." So that's getting into the fall of 95. Carol Howe is being outed. And what does the federal government do? They end up charging her. And I might want to talk about that later. So that's what was going on. Did I get to your question?
Let me just interrupt quickly.
Okay.
Are you following your slides? I mean, your slides haven't moved. So I didn't know if you were using your slides or.
Are you the Oklahoma City bomber?
I can't believe this is working.
One of the benefits
Let's watch
of
this.
talking to you today is that
It's not on our screen. You may have to click on.
Okay, I'll just pass. Can you see the bombing investigation team here?
No.
Yes. Well, you need to move your slides forward.
They may be moving on his screen, Jenny. They're not moving on ours.
Yeah.
Just click on that slide. Put your mouse on it and click on the slide and see if it'll come up.
Or just down that left side, just click on the slide down the left side.
The left side. There we go. I got you. Does that change anything?
No.
Well, dang it. Well, okay, let me use this and we'll just keep going since we have people on here, and let's just see what happens.
Right.
So what this slide that you cannot see shows is me and other guys like George Wallace, which you guys I think know, Dale Phillips, who I had dinner with last night. VZ Lawton was in the building, is very fortunate he survived. He's passed away. And Ken Blood, who locally owns a company named Nobel Systems. I've known him for a long time. I asked these guys to be on the bombing investigation committee and start it with myself, which they did. And we met very regularly. I'm telling you, we met just like if we were any serious organization. We interviewed people all the time. Formerly, we had private investigators that worked for us. And we had attorneys that we talked to. We did all of these things in that bombing report and more that didn't get in there, in which we interviewed all kinds of people. And these guys were amazing. George Wallace has passed away about a year ago. He was a longtime Air Force fighter pilot. Dale Phillips is alive and owns an insurance company here in town. VZ Lawton was sitting at his desk on the 8th floor behind a column. So there was a column between him and the front windows. And he was signing some papers. And he said the only thing he remembers is lights kind of flickering. Something fell down, hit him on the head, knocked him out. He gets up, and after he wakes up after a few minutes and gets up and kind of starts looking at his chaos, of course. And he makes his way towards the windows, but that horseshoe area had cut through there, part of it. And he's leaning up against a column looking out over the building. I go to that much detail to tell that story because a couple of weeks later, he was talking to people. VZ was a real social animal. He knew everybody in the world.
He did.
And he was talking to the post office people who he knew very well. And the lady said, "Oh, my daughter," she goes, "My daughter rushed down when it happened to make sure I was okay." She was a photography student, and she took pictures, and there's a picture looking at the face of the building, a black and white. And on that 8th floor, standing next to a column, you can see it's an eerie photo. You see this figure. It's almost like a stick figure, but you can see a person kind of leaning there. It's kind of an eerie picture. It was VZ. He said, "I'll pull it out. Let's see." And it was him. So they happened to take a picture when he did that. So he was actually not part of our group at first, but the more he heard what we were talking about and others, he was actually congregating with the other group that was coalescing around the federal prosecutors. And VZ left that group and came over to our group. And he was very adamant about finding the truth about who killed his fellow coworkers and friends. That's the way he would say it.
So Lisa wanted to know, why would eyewitness interviews not make it into official reports?
Why would some of the interviews not make it into the reports?
Right.
All I meant by what I said was that we did a ton of investigation interviews. We had video, audio, and written affidavits by many of these people. We just didn't put everything in the report because there was a lot of, I've joked around a number of times, I could write a book on the quote crazies, frankly. And I had a lot of, maybe a story or two of that to make the point. A lot of stuff that turned out to not be valid or we couldn't verify it. So everything we put in that report, with a few exceptions, were things that we could validate, or verify and stuff, or people would give us an affidavit. So that's what I meant by that. We would start.
And if we want to pause for just a second, Charles, I figured out how we can get your presentation on. If you hit present again, we're looking at your original. We're looking at your original PowerPoint file. When you hit from beginning, it opened a new window with the actual files itself, and that's what you're looking at. So if you hit present, you can hit that window again and then choose the PowerPoint that's actually on your screen. Now you can go. Now you should be able to go through it.
Okay, so I had to back up because I had that on full screen. Where do I go now?
Well, we can just leave it like this. You can just click on the tile you want us to see on the left side of your screen. Yeah, there we go.
All right, that's great.
At least it'll be on there now.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I've got this here, this scripture from Proverbs, because Ken Blood was a excellent leader of our group, conduct our meetings, and many times he's just natural at that, so he did it, and he would put this scripture up, and it became our what do you want to call it, whatever, our go-to scripture. So I use it all the time now. Buy the truth and do not sell it. By wisdom, instruction, and understanding. Here's what I found out. I did an interview with Court TV at one point. Drive down there. They go down to OU. They've got a studio, blah, blah, blah. There'll be somebody from Macy's office. Or I think they actually said in that one, they said, Bob Macy will be there. Well, I get down there. It's not Bob Macy. It's a assistant DA. And he and I are sitting chair to chair, like those interviews do, and they're asking us questions. While we're doing the interview, I'm saying the controversial stuff. He's not saying anything controversial. He doesn't even want to be there, you know. And so it's over. He and I are standing off to the side talking, and I, you know, bring up some things that he wanted to clarify. And he says, well, I can tell you who's running this. I said, I'd like to know that. He said, it's Jamie Gorlick, Abner Mikva, and Merrick Garland. He said there's a conference call at least every Monday, and sometimes there's another one, in which the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, somebody from the governor's office, somebody from the mayor's office, the DA's office will be on there. And when Macy doesn't want to be on it, I'll be on that sometimes. So they're the ones that are calling the shots. Well, at the time, it wasn't that big a deal, but Merrick Garland, you talk about him, and all these people, if you go look at their backgrounds, they're longtime friends of Bill and Hillary. Abner Mikva has been quoted as saying in an interview way back, he's dead now, that if people knew what, and this is a paraphrase, if people knew what happened in the Oklahoma City bombing, there would be riots in the streets, or some words really, really closely like that. And so why would that be? I'm going to just jump into that real quick. We're going to Eldon's Body Shop, but people want to know, and I did all these interviews and speaking engagements back in the day. Everybody wants to know, well, just tell us who did it. What happened? You know, how did it take place? And it was frustrating for a lot of people, and it still is, because we don't know all the truth. And we're being attacked right and left. And so I've got a document we'll look at here at the end of this presentation. That's an FBI document. You can just read it, show it for yourself. It's heavily redacted. But the part that's not redacted says, after we interviewed these people and this, that, and the other, it's very clear that this was a sting operation, that was a fake sting operation that the ATF and FBI knew about ahead of time, and they failed to complete it, whatever they were trying to do. They failed in it. So that's the problem, is you've got this failed, you got prior knowledge, and they had to eliminate. This is my theory, and I think it's real clear. They had to eliminate the other people that were seen with McVeigh and related to the case, because it will go down a path to pursue those people, of course, for what they were part of. But it's also going to want to identify those people. And there's a lot of undercover government agents in this, or at least a few that we've seen in documents. They're known by their numbers. We have an audio recording of a phone call of a woman here locally with another individual who has been identified as being a local police officer who was part of a task force. I can't think of the exact name of it now, but we've all heard of different task forces that the federal government, like DOJ or FBI, will create with local police, law enforcement, or county law enforcement officials for drug interdiction and things like that. Well, this guy was part of that, and he's having a conversation with this lady that was real involved on the survivor side of all of this, and was part of one of the books that was put out called Angels Over Oklahoma and things like that. And she's raising these questions to him. This is in our report. You can read this transcript. She's raising questions with him about, well, what about this and what about that? And he goes, look, you need to stop asking these questions, because you're going to jeopardize the safety and maybe the lives of some undercover people, because he was confirming what I've just told you. This was a sting operation that got out of hand. And if they pull the covers back too much, it'll expose some of these people. I would submit what they really didn't want was to be sued into another universe and lose jobs and possible retirements, who knows what, embarrassment, et cetera, et cetera. That was really the motivation. So Eldon's Body Shop, this is where the Ryder truck was rented. McVeigh and another person goes in there 2 days before or maybe it was the day before.
Well, just real quick, Charles, when you say another person, we're not talking Terry Nichols. Otherwise, you'd say Terry Nichols, correct?
Exactly. It was a John Doe. And so in that building, you can see it right there. They rented Ryder trucks and vehicles, and they also did body work and other mechanical work. And they had this little it was about a 10 by 10 cubicle. You walk into that office and you do the paperwork right there. And it's Eldon Elliott is the owner, and his office manager lady named Connie Beamer. They were the ones that did all that stuff. And the day that McVeigh and this John Doe came in, there was a third person that was a mechanic taking a break in that area, sitting over to the side, eating a sandwich or something. And so McVeigh and this person walks in, they do the paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the FBI is up there, Q&A and everybody in the world. And Connie and Eldon were really getting perturbed and kind of ticked off at the FBI. And we've got an inside story on this because one of our investigators was up there all the time, a local professional private investigator named Jim Grace, who's passed away now. And he was talking to them, got to know them real well, and so many other people, if you all talk about here. They were really ticked off at the FBI because they kept pushing them. Well, are you sure it was two people? Are you sure this? Are you sure that?
Wow.
Could you have mixed it up? Would you do this? Would you do that? And they were getting ticked off because they said they felt like they were trying to get them to change their story. And then they asked them and the third guy in the office at that time, they said, well, would you all be willing to go under hypnosis? Eldon and Connie said, absolutely not. We don't need to go under hypnosis. We're not going to do it. And they talked this other guy whose name was Tom Kessinger into doing that. They had the hypnotic session. The next morning, the FBI has a press conference and say, we found out what happened. There was a mistake. There was two guys that came in, at another time, the day after or right before McVeigh came in, but it was actually McVeigh came in by himself. And we've discovered this through this hypnotic session with this guy that didn't even do the transaction, wasn't paying as much attention as the other two people, et cetera, et cetera. From that point, they started making it just McVeigh, Nichols, and Fortier, the third guy. And, and left John Doe out there as we're looking for him. We're trying to find him. We noticed it real clearly. A little side comment here. As I've done this and talked about other things over the years, many of them, a lot of them having to do with politics and government, some of them conspiracy related type of things. So a lot of people, are conditioned to wait until an official source tells you something before you decide what that something is. If you follow what I'm saying, like in this case, the government said, well, we found out blah, 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 and they made a mistake. We're just going to buy into that. And the government says it's not really taken very seriously. Well, nobody really questioned that, and the media didn't. And another thing about the media is in competition with themselves and each other to get from their customer, their primary customer is the government, where they go to get information. So a lot of them won't scrutinize the government very much, if at all, because they don't want to get on the bad side of the government people that will give them, the reporter and their company they work for, preferential treatment. So they started changing it then. Another story down in Hutchinson, Kansas, there is the Dreamland Hotel. Let's see if we've got that one. Let me jump to this one real quick. Dreamland Hotel. A guy named Jeff Davis, a food delivery guy, was bringing some Chinese food to the room that McVeigh and this John Doe was in. And he gave his testimony, knocks on the door. They open it up. It's just your typical old kind of the old Holiday Inn style. You know, just get one room with 2 beds in it. The guy opens the door, the McVeigh, and does the transaction. Opens it up wide open. They're not trying to hide anything. And he does the transaction with the guy, and then he sees the guy sitting on the bed there and reported to the police. That's where this sketch came from. And then you see Jeannie Boylan at the bottom of that sketch. She's that famous FBI sketch artist. And she tells the story that when she went to do the sketch with this Jeff Davis and told her that story that I just told, she got excited and thought maybe the FBI didn't know this part of the story or something, and got their attention to say, hey, did you know this? There's this other guy there, blah, blah, blah. And they said, yeah, thank you very much. Just please finish the thing and go on and go away. They didn't want to talk about it. But there you have a really excellent witness.
Wow.
This one, I'll stop if you want to ask a question, but this is a really big example right here. Paul Heath. Dr. Paul Heath is the public affairs officer for the Veterans Administration at the Murrah Building. And he said it was either the Friday before the bombing or that Friday before that one. He couldn't remember for sure, but McVeigh and 2 John Does visited the VA. And in their office, they don't have a front office person like a secretary or something like that. And they got a little bell up there. So they hear the bell go off. He goes up there, he walks up and he sees 3 guys. McVeigh's the lead guy, and he goes, hi, how you doing? I'm Dr. Heath. How can I help you? And they said, well, we're veterans. He said they get veterans come in a lot and say, can you help us find work or stuff like that? And he has this conversation with them. And you know what? I need to take a break. Are you there?
Yeah.
Let me take a quick break.
Okay. And his internet is going out, just like my internet is going out.
Yeah,
it's the weirdest thing.
Pull him down for a second.
Yeah. So
yeah, I tell you what. Well, go
we
ahead.
Need
and
to
read
get
that
Dorn's.
comment.
We need to get him to answer Dorn's question when he comes back. Yeah, this has been the weirdest. I mean, because his internet is having trouble too. Sometimes he comes in and out, and I'm having trouble hearing him. Is that me or just you? Or
no, his internet's kind of going in and out. Sometimes his audio is kind of skippy also.
Skippy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Dorn asked how many federal ATF or FBI agents were there at work.
Yeah.
And or died that morning. I was told 0, and not one of them showed up to work that morning until after the bombing.
Yeah.
Oh, Neanne says hers. I wonder if there's a sunspot thing going on. Have you heard of any sunspot activity?
No, there's something going on for
Well,
sure.
there's definitely something going on. I think we're back up on Instagram. It's finally working on Instagram, but that wasn't working this morning either. I mean, it's like, wow, I just can't figure out what all is going on this morning. Yeah. So you were saying something. I don't remember what it was.
Well, I just wanted to touch back again on General Parton, because I actually read his report at one time. And I mean, it was so mind-blowing, Jenny, because I think he compiled, which I wanted to ask Charles, but he came down, kind of did his own investigation, compiled a complete report, like a formal, report you'd give like in the military, all the way. And he had all of his ballistics and his kind of demolition. I don't know the right word, but like he showed where he mapped out where the truck was, the distance from the building, what the shock wave, like every 5 feet or, whatever it was, the demolition type. And by the time you got to the building itself, it literally was just, not enough to do anything. Kind of like that example Charles gave,
right,
with the firecracker. And I kind of explained it once to my son with the firecracker. I said, look, if you put your hand out and you put a black cat on your hand and you light it, yeah, it's going to go off. It's going to hurt. But you go like this, you light that firecracker and go like this, it's going to literally blow your hand off.
Blow your hand off. Yeah. So there was a question that we threw up while you were gone. Can you provide how many federal ATF FBI agents were there at work and or died that morning? I was told 0, and then not one of them showed up to work that morning until after the bombing.
That is correct. And I've got the details in the presentation about that. If we get through the whole thing, which I'm assuming we will, I'll go into that. I've got some extra stuff to show you also. The ATF.
What happened to your PowerPoint?
Oh, I apologize. I think I messed up. Let's see. Do you see it?
I do not. You know, if you have to get up, all you have to do is just remove yourself. If you click over your face, you just hit remove and it pulls you out. Like this.
Okay.
Or not. Didn't work for me. Worked for Michael, though. We took Michael out.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to do here. Let's see.
Well, while you're looking at that, and then John Boy says Starlink is messing up. It's slow, and his wife said her internet at work isn't working right. So something, I tend to think something is wacky. There was supposed to be some sunspot activity, and I'm wondering if something is going on because this is weird. We've never had this much trouble before. So what about Dorn's question?
Well, okay, I'll just keep moving forward, and maybe this will
Yeah,
like it did last time, maybe. So I had a guy up there on the screen named Paul Heath, and I was talking about him. So he just went up to introduce himself to McVeigh and these two guys, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Heath," and he goes, "I'm Tim McVeigh." And McVeigh says, and Dr. Heath says, "Oh, McVeigh, are you related to the McVeighs down in such and such town in southern Oklahoma?" I forgot the town's name. And he goes, "How do they spell their?" Interesting. Everything I'm telling you in this conversation is exactly the way he said it. I mean, I might have a and or wrong, but this story is real dynamic. It's been told a lot of times. He's told it to the press exactly the way I'm telling you. McVeigh says, "How do they spell their name?" And Dr. Heath says, McVey. And McVeigh says this. He goes, "Oh, no, Dr. Heath. Remember, my name is spelled McVeigh. Oh, no, Dr. Heath. Remember, my name's spelled." That's what he said. And he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, you missed a really good family," and blah, 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 you know, kind of in good nature. And he says, "How can I help you guys?" And so "We're looking for work," and blah, 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 blah. And they had a short conversation about that. And then he said the other two guys, he couldn't say that was Nichols or anybody like that. Didn't recognize them in that regard, but they were quiet, didn't say anything. One of them just sat down in a chair and sat there, and they all walked out and left. Very interesting situation there. Any questions on that one?
I don't think so.
I mean, I do want to just ask before we get into too much more. Like, all of this information that you have was just you and your group or whoever just going out, following leads, doing investigation one way or another. Like, did the mainstream news, you know, Channel 4, 9, 5, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, did any of them ever have any type of story on any of these little deals like this?
Yes. But it was only Channel 4, the NBC affiliate. And a lot of people remember that Jana Davis was a reporter there, and she pursued the Middle Eastern part of this and became convinced and wrote a book about the Middle Eastern was the answer. It was the whole reason behind all of this. I don't believe that's true. There is Middle Eastern involvement, but yeah. And so, you know, I remember we went to Channel 4 once and we talked to Melissa Cleansing, who was the TV station news director. She wanted to let me know right up front. She goes, "I'm a self-admitted Mondale Democrat, you know." But she said, "I'm real open. I believe in openness and honesty and all that kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. And that's why we're doing this." And they were pursuing it. Brad Edwards, you might remember Brad Edwards in your corner. He was pursuing it also. And I'll tell a story there real quick. Brad Edwards, so I'm working with Glenn Wilburn. He and his wife, Kathy, were the grandparents of two little boys that died. Their daughter, Edie, was the mother of those two little boys, working real close with Glenn. Started out, June or July of 95. And try not to lose my train of thought here either. So I apologize. What were we just talking about? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, now I can see your screen. Yes.
Great. So Regency Towers here. What am I talking about? Sorry. Johnny's Tire Center. McVeigh pulls the Ryder truck up there about 15 or 10 till, I forget the time on this one, but it was some considerable time before the 9 o'clock bombing. Mike Morose comes out to meet him because he said, I could tell he pulled out right out there by the sign, and like he was somebody looking for information. He walked right up to the door. McVeigh opened the driver's door and got out, and it was left open. And he goes, hey, can I help you? And he goes, yeah, I'm looking for the federal building. And so that Mike proceeds to tell him, well, just go right up the street and go over here. And he said he could see the John Doe in the car, in the vehicle. It wasn't believed that McVeigh didn't know where the federal building was. It was just believed that that's probably what he said to that person when he walked up. He was getting ready to deliver that, and that was probably his answer. That's my thinking. He drives on up. So there's a really good, close idea of a John Doe right there again. So then as we get
in the truck with McVeigh. So they saw this guy in the truck with McVeigh.
Yep. Just like if I walked up to you in your vehicle and you got out, left the door open, we shook hands. I said, hey, how's it going? And I could see somebody sitting in your passenger car real clear. Regency Towers. So it's believed that the Ryder truck went around multiple times. In other words, more than once. They didn't just pull it up the first time, walk off, and it blew up. And it's also speculated, not by the government, although they probably know. They're not going to speculate on stuff or not even tell you what you have a right to know a lot of times, but that there might have been more than one Ryder truck, just as a decoy or something like that. But in this case, this Regency Towers, you have McVeigh pull up, and this is a real important point. There's a couple of real important witness accounts here. On the Regency Towers, which the view we're looking at is facing south, the next block east is the Murrah building. So the Ryder truck pulls up over there, and it's across the street from this Regency. And there were phones, payphones over there. So he pulls up, obviously using the payphone because he goes over there to use it. And the John Doe standing over there with him. And this guy named Mike Nation is a resident of the Regency, and he's standing out there waiting for a ride, smoking a cigarette. And he said he can see all this. And he just kind of watches it because he's just sitting there waiting. And he sees McVeigh talking to somebody, and he throws some pretty choice curse words out. And then he turned to the John Doe, and he goes, he wants us to effing stay here. Or some words like that. So that's an important point right there. And then a little bit later, you have the Ryder truck go around, pull back up to the front of the Regency Tower, the front door, actually at the front door. And McVeigh gets out, goes inside. There's a little store inside there, right inside the door. Danny Wilkerson is running that in the Regency. He buys a pack of cigarettes and a couple of cans of Coke or something. And McVeigh doesn't smoke, by the way. So he goes out and goes back in the truck and takes off, and they pull in front of the building or go around the building one more time or something. So you've got surveillance video that shows all of this too. And
was that audio on the surveillance, or it was just the video itself?
It was just, I can't remember for sure, but I think all they showed was the video. Because my point here is that, they've got all kinds of video, and they've been hiding that all these years. And there's still a lawsuit engaged to try to get that out. But what they did show at the trial of McVeigh is it was either 6 or 8 seconds of this video that showed from inside the Regency looking out the front door at the street, and it shows the Ryder truck go by. Well, it's the same video. It's the same surveillance video that showed all this other stuff, but they don't want to show that, but they had to show certain things. They didn't bring any of the eyewitnesses, and there is a ton of them. excellent eyewitnesses.
What was McVeigh the one that said they don't want us to go in there, or was it the other guy that was with McVeigh when they stopped at the payphone?
No, I'm not sure what you're say with McVeigh said. He wants us to wait here. He wants us to effing wait here, or wait for some time. I think that was what his words were. But he referred to a person that he wants us to wait or something like that, and a curse word thrown in there in the middle of it. And that's what that was about. Then you come up here to the Murrah building, and a couple of witnesses we'll look at here. The Ryder truck pulls up. You can see the purple dot there. This is the alley. It's been changed, of course. The Journal Record, that little stairwell there, people would come out and take their break there, smoke, whatever. This guy named Gary Lewis worked in the print shop. He came out just before 9 and said he was going to go walk down to get something in his vehicle, which was around the corner on the other side of this building. And he says as he walked up to that platform and just kind of looked around and started walking down, he noticed this yellow Mercury Marquis sitting right there in a parking space, because that whole area to the left of this picture was parking space that everybody used at Journal Record at the Murrah building. And so this vehicle sitting there, he noticed it, and he noticed a John Doe sitting in it. He states that in his case. So he walks to his car, gets what he comes walk. As he gets close to the stairwell, that car comes flying down the alley right next to him, and he reacted like anybody would. He kind of steps back and he looks at it as it goes by, and it's McVeigh driving, the John Doe in it. And as it goes by on down to Robinson, and there's a speed bump in there, he said it hits this speed bump, and I could see this box in the back seat bounce up like a big black box. Doesn't know if that's significant or anything, but he's just reporting everything he experienced. And then it turns south and goes south. And then he is, of course, very fortunate that he went inside that building and closed it before it went off, because he might not have survived that. But then the next thing that is happening at the same time is you have this guy, Rodney Johnson, and the FBI said they thought he was told them at one point that he was their most important witness. Now, Rodney was gay, as we say, and he admits that, and it's in his testimony. The reason I bring it up, he was actually a paramedic, but he'd started this business got him a deli truck and was driving this deli truck. It was his deal. And he was coming right in front of the Murrah building. And as he was slowly going in front of the building, somebody walks in front of him. There's a Ryder truck over there. I don't know if he necessarily remembered that. I can't remember that part of his testimony. It's not the real point here, but McVeigh walks in front of his big deli truck with those big old doors on the side. He has to throw his brakes on. He's not screeching halt. He wasn't going that fast, but he had to kind of quickly throw his brakes on. He sees McVeigh go by, and he said, I really looked at him because I thought he was good looking, and I was just checking him out. And so that's important, because, really looking at the guy, and he sees him go into that parking lot. And then Rodney proceeds on, and fortunately has a green light and gets past that section. And then the bomb goes off, and it said it kind of lifted his truck. You just feel the whole thing just get kind of pushed. Wow. But then that's McVeigh going over to get in that truck with the John Doe that Gary Lewis had just seen. Well, another thing is Rodney was told he called them immediately. He called them and gave his story before any of the press had come out with any descriptions of who they were looking for. They were starting to say, we're looking for this person, that person, whatever, this brown pickup truck, things like that. He called them before any of that. And so his testimony could not have been tainted in any way if the defense ever tried to make such. But then they did not use him, and they used somebody. So this will be the last witness case that I use. It's not this page. Dana Bradley, a young mother that was at the Social Security office when the bomb happened, was trapped underneath heavy concrete and other rubble. She's the one they had to cut her leg off to get her out of there. Well,
on that slide, will you?
I didn't have that slide. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I went back to it. So She could see from that Social Security office. She could just look right out the window and see the Ryder truck pull up. But she saw the passenger side, so she saw the John Doe get out. He walked through the back, did something in the back, and walked back into view, and then walked out of view. Real important. She's the only witness that the prosecution used in the McVeigh trial. And now I'm going to say something real important. In our report, the very first chapter is titled The Preliminary Hearing, also called Probable Cause Hearings. Whenever you get charged, they have to have that hearing to show what evidence they have to justify holding you over for trial, et cetera, and they have to do it in court. Judge has to agree to it. Well, they did that. They flew McVeigh. People remember they flew McVeigh from Cushing, or wherever he was, not Cushing, but Perry, down to El Reno Federal Penitentiary, and they had that hearing there. Our first chapter talks about that, and the whole hearing is about eyewitnesses. I think it was 21 they presented, and these are all people saying, I saw that guy McVeigh with another person. Sometimes they saw him with two people, and these are people all over the place. So he's seen all over. Why didn't they use those witnesses? Why didn't they go after the John Does more, and why couldn't they get more success at that? And it's because they didn't want to, because they'll have to identify some of these other people. So I'm going to prior knowledge now. If you got any questions on eyewitness accounts or anything else you want to bring up.
Well, we still didn't answer Dorn's question about whether or not the FBI, did they come in late? Remember, he asked that. He said, can you provide how many federal ATF FBI agents were there at work and or died that morning? I was told 0 of them showed up until after the bombing.
Okay, so here's I don't want to get ahead. I don't want to mess myself up or I'll forget what I'm doing. There's so much here. It's thick. It's a thick subject. Okay, let's talk about the ATF. The ATF were not in their offices. I wish somebody would challenge me on this and sue me. I really do. Think about this. In 30 years, and we put this out in 1991. I mean, in 2001. Right at the time 9/11 happened is when this report became available. It was being printed. We have not been sued by anyone with all that information in there. Why wouldn't they sue us? Because they can't successfully sue us, and they don't want to bring all these details up. So the ATF, here, bombing happens, people immediately come to the scene, paramedics, people that had spouses that worked in the building. The first one I'll talk about is Bruce Shaw. I wonder if I ought to go this route, because we're going to get there here in just a minute. The thing about the ATF lack of presence there, and by the way, the FBI did not have a formal office in that building. They were in the 50-pin place.
That's right.
And now they're somewhere else. So there weren't any there, but there weren't no ATF agents were hurt or damaged or killed. And here's the story on that is Bruce Shaw, his wife, worked in the Federal Credit Union and had for a long time, and they'd gone to many functions where people in that building, government workers, went to Christmas, you name it, all kinds of things. So they'd got to where they knew people real well, and she did, of course, and he got to meet through them. So he's working south of the downtown area. This bombing goes off. He freaks out like so many people do, and he rushes up there to look for his wife. He's coming up from that back side, which was not the damaged face of the building, remember? And he comes around the side of it. He sees that building like the Wilburns and so many other people did, and your heart just sinks.
Yeah.
And he sees an ATF agent over there with like a phone or walkie-talkie kind of thing. And he said and he's given his testimony to multiple media. He said, I didn't recognize this ATF agent because we knew all the people there, et cetera, I just mentioned in my profile of him. That's why I told all of that. He goes, I didn't recognize this guy. I went up to him and I said, hey, my wife works in the credit union. I've got to find out if she's okay. Is there any ATF officers that I could talk to or something? And he was talking to somebody, he put the phone down, and he said, we weren't in our building this morning, and they're in a briefing right now. Nobody was in there, and we're in a briefing right now. That's where they're all at. Oh, okay. So he went on and did what he did. In the meantime, we've got an example of Catherine Mallett and Tiffany Bible, both of them paramedics. I'm going to put their stories together because they're so similar. Tiffany was there immediately. She was there within literally minutes, not 15 or 30 minutes, within like 5 minutes, because she and her vehicle and whoever she's working with happened to be down there real close. So they immediately got down there, and she was kind of hooked up with 2 ATF agents. She's talking to them. They're telling stuff. And she goes, oh, and they're mentioning at the time all the different agencies that were in there. And she says, oh, you've got some of your fellow employees in there. And he says, no, we weren't in our offices this morning. And then they go on and talk some more. And they end up talking about another explosive device they found on a gas line that didn't go off that they're taking out, et cetera, et cetera. So the ATF, one thing that we'll see, and I've got an extra photo here that I want to show. If I can pull it up, we'll see. I don't want to do it right now and mess what we've got going on up. There's one ATF agent. People will remember this. So the morning of the bombing, chaos going on, rescue efforts going in, still early in the morning. It's like a war zone down there. And there's an agent named Luke Franey, has long hair. He was like others that we've all heard of and heard speak before, et cetera, et cetera. He did some undercover work. That's why he had long hair, and he kind of dressed like he was just a street guy or something. And so at about, I think it was about 10:30 that morning of the bombing, up in 7th floor or so, there's this ATF agent up there that made a homemade sign with cardboard. It says, ATF agent needs help, or something like that. Well, he made this, he claimed that he was in the building when the bombing happened. He survived it, and he got trapped up there and couldn't get out. And he's asking them to help me get out of here. Well, we have pictures of him down on the floor, the street level, that people that know who he is have told us that's definitely Luke Franey down there before that time that he was seen upstairs, up in the top part of the building. So I don't believe that he was trapped in the building. Plus, he didn't have debris all over him. He didn't have, serious damage like other people did. A lot of people, of course, just died. Just being and then so the rest is, well, this is not in the book because I couldn't state this, but somebody knew the secretary, a female that worked in that ATF office, knew who that was, had her phone number, gave me the phone number. I called her and she never would pick up. I left a message. Of course, we're going back. But she told this friend that when they said something similar to her, oh man, you're lucky you didn't get hurt, or whatever the conversation was. And she said, no, we weren't in the offices that morning. So there were one or two more things I could think about this, because this is obviously very controversial. Of all the ATF agents that worked in the Murrah building, there were 2 of them that were what they called compliance agents, and they worked in the DIA office because their work was more accounting and things like that, and they had a space problem. So these guys officed over there, and they were in that office. Little side story, I was at the gym I've been going to all my life, and this one of these guys walked up to me. I didn't know who he was, and he had his son with him right in the heat of all of this, and he was pretty ticked off at me. He goes, hey, Representative Key, I'm so-and-so. I work for the ATF, and I was there. You guys are saying X, Y, and Z, and it's not true. So then we have this conversation, and I bring up things to him that I just mentioned to you, and he got real quiet. He acted like either he hadn't heard that before, or he didn't know what to say and didn't know what to think about it, But the ATF were not in that building. Prior knowledge, we've talked about Carol Howe. When they ended up, when Carol Howe got outed, I told you there was rumor, there's this informant, blah, blah, blah. Here's the story of Carol Howe. Real beautiful, young, blonde girl, young lady. She grew up in Tulsa. She was from a wealthy oil-related family. That's only important because when they charged her, her parents were able to hire one of the top lawyers in the state to keep her from going to prison for something she had no guilt on. But she started doing what a lot of young people do, kind of running wild in the streets, we'll just call it that, and hanging out with different, wrong crowd. Some of them were these skinhead types, Dennis Mahon and some others, and some of them were associated with Elohim City out in eastern Oklahoma, right on the border of Arkansas. That's part of the story. And so they started hitting up on her and stuff, and she got tired of it. And she went to the ATF on her own and said, hey, I need a victim protection order against this one particular, I think it was Dennis Mahon. So they gave that to her, and they said, hey, we want to talk to you about being an informant for us. Now, everybody knows a lot of times those informants, most of the time, you get caught, they give you a deal, and you got to go through that deal to get out of your problem. Well, that wasn't the case with Carol Howe. They didn't have anything on her. She agreed to keep meeting with her. They told her to collect evidence like bomb-making material stuff and things like that, which she did. Okay, now let's just go back to where I left off the story. She's getting outed. She gets outed. People are trying to get to her to talk to her. And then the FBI, DOJ, files charges against her for having bomb-making materials, and I forget what the other charges were, in her possession that they told her to collect. There was 3 points in this whole investigation, my experience in this, where I had a come to Jesus meeting, like, holy crap, they're serious about this, And this was one of them when I saw that. Another little tidbit on that story is Jim Inhofe's sister, Joan Inhofe, I think was her first name, was real active in the Republican Party, very conservative, in all kinds of things. She was on that jury. And that may be the reason that they didn't convict her. I don't know if it was or not. Maybe the jury wouldn't have done that anyway, because they had a good lawyer, had a good case that they could bring. But that really got my attention when I, realized face to face, they're going to do whatever they can to get you if they can, to shut you up. The next one on this screen is Kerry Gagan. This guy, we might not normally use this case, but this guy was a small-time kind of crook in the Denver area. He had already been convicted on stuff like drug running and drug stuff, but he also would do things like going to a grocery store where they're mopping the floor and, oops, I slipped down and hurt myself and I'm suing the company now. He was that kind of guy and had some of that stuff on his record. Well, he was being recruited for something that turned out to be casing federal buildings out. This is his story. Casing federal buildings out and transporting some bomb-making materials. And he said when that became part of the deal, he got real worried, didn't want to be a part of it. He went to the DOJ office in Denver, told them what was going on. He says, I don't want to have anything to do with that. They said, look, we want you to keep meeting with those people, report back to us. We'll give you a letter of immunity. We have the letter of immunity in our book. People can read it for themselves. That's the real big thing about this guy's case. In addition to this one last thing, he had this information and went to them 5 months before the Oklahoma City bombing. It wasn't after. And he goes, oh, by the way, I had this blah, blah, blah stuff or anything like that. It was 5 months before the bombing that he went to them and they gave him this letter of immunity. And then he gets outed later on down the road. So that's pretty interesting. Some of his story includes where they were casing buildings out, which was Omaha, Oklahoma City. I'm trying to remember the other one now. It was Houston or somebody. And they were, and they were white. The individuals that he interfaced with were both white and dark complected. I believe he said in his testimony, he couldn't say for sure if it was Hispanic or Middle Eastern. I think he said Hispanic the first time he told the story. But that's an interesting story right there. What's going on with that?
Well, when he went 5 months early to the DOJ in Denver, did he specifically name McVeigh or did he have any actual
I know
people's names, or what was the relationship there?
one of the whites he said he thought was Terry Nichols, but he didn't meet any of them by their name. So he didn't know their actual names.
Yeah.
But he didn't identify McVeigh, but he did say, I think one of the guys that was with the people that I was meeting with might have been Terry Nichols, but he wasn't for sure on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go to this one on this page to Wayne Alley because it's short and quick. He's a federal judge. He was in the federal courthouse. He gave an interview, like another one we're getting ready to talk about, to his hometown newspaper, which was in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Oregonian. And they interview him the next day. It comes out, and he said, well, there were some people that told us that there might be some folks coming through town over the weekend, I think are the words, and that we ought to take extra precautions. Well, he's never nailed down on that either and wasn't allowed to be, but that was another bit of information like others that we're going to talk about as we go along here. The Black Forest one is the one that really, it's one of these ones like Carol Howe, some of the others. VZ, German descent, had relatives in Germany that he knew and had met in the past. He had a son that was in the Air Force that was stationed there, and he would go visit him and them from time to time. He enjoyed doing that. He goes over in I believe it was 97, and he calls me back and he says, Charles, he goes, you're not going to believe what I found out. I said, what? He goes, this is really dynamic. I said, what? He goes, I can't tell you. I like to tell the story because we all hate that when somebody does that. I can't tell you. And I wasn't going to see him anytime soon because he's over in Germany. So it's about a week before he gets back. When he gets back, here's the story. He would stay with his son, but he'd maybe take a little tourist jaunt on the Rhine or something, do something. And he took a little trip with some other tourists. And then they had a dinner that night at a restaurant, and they're sitting at round tables. He's at a round table with several other people. There's two ladies there that are in their 40s. They're cousins. They came on this trip together. So they're having conversation at this table, and VZ has lost some of his hearing because of the bombing. And every once in a while he goes, huh? Repeat that or something. And so one of those ladies spoke up to him in a good-natured way and said, VZ, you need to get your hearing checked, or something like that. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what happened. I was in the Oklahoma City bombing and blah, 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 blah. Well, that got everybody's attention, and they want to talk about it. VZ is more than willing, and he started telling them some stuff. And at one point, I don't remember what he said to them, but one of the ladies said, oh, I bet that's why we got that phone call. And he goes, what are you talking about? She goes, well, I work at Walter Reed Army Hospital in a special division, a unit that specializes in black wave over treatment for victims of bombs.
In what? Because you cut out for that. Say that again.
It's a unit that takes care of and studies, takes care of victims of blast wave overpressure. That's what it's called, like the truck sitting out in front of the building, the wave of pressure that comes. So they know that. They know how to treat people. They know what the effects it has on people. It's funny that at Walter Reed Army Hospital, they have a unit that just primarily deals with that. So he's talking to her. She goes, yeah, I'm in this unit, and we got a call. She says, I can't remember if it was the day before or 2 days. So it'd be Monday or Tuesday before the Wednesday of the bombing. She said, I can't remember which day it was, but we get a call from a person that says, I'm a congressional liaison working with the governor's office in Oklahoma, and we're inquiring for the proper treatment for blast wave overpressure victims. I've said this a lot. You can tell because that's what they said. And you can read this in our report, a little more detail to it. And VZ goes, what? Yeah, we got this call and da-da-da-da-da. Well, he got her phone number. We followed up with her. We had a private investigator up there in that area that we had also hired. We were fortunate we had people that provided the money to do this stuff. And this guy was a retired Marine officer, worked for ABC News for a while. He followed up, went and talked to her. She told him the same story. He said, well, can I meet your supervisor? It was a male doctor in that office. She introduced him to the doctor, and they had a conversation, and he confirmed it exactly, just as we're talking. He goes, yeah, we got that call. They said this, that, and the other. And Roger, the investigator for us, said, well, could you, excuse me. He goes, did you by chance take any notes or anything like that? And he goes, yeah, I did. I'm a real big note taker, and I remember doing that. I took notes. He goes, did you keep them? Can you find them? He goes, I may have those. I'll try to find them. So then he wanted to get back with him, which he did, and the other lady, and they went quiet on us from that point forward. But that's a big story right there. What does that mean?
So someone from the governor's office calls the Walter Reed unit for shockwave days ahead of the bombing.
Correct.
Wow. So
I've got one that's kind of similar to that really curl your teeth or whatever, but I'm going to keep going ahead because I'll probably get that in just a second. Here's another one similar to the Judge Wayne Alley. Harvey Weathers, he's still alive today. He used to work at the Capitol, one of the green coat guys. He was an assistant fire department chief. And I'll never forget this story. Glenn Wilbur calls me one day. I'm driving down the street. He goes, hey, Charlie, you're not going to believe this. I said, what happened? He goes, I went down to the fire department to go find that guy, Harvey Weathers, talk to him. And he goes, I went into another office first as I'm walking down the hall, a different assistant. And there's this article right here that we're looking at on the screen. It's USA Today, their article the next day after the bombing. And it quotes Harvey Weathers saying, yeah, we had information. We got a call from the FBI that said some possibility of some people entering the city over the weekend. That's the words he used. Glenn walks into this office of another guy. He said, hey, this is who I am. And everybody knew who he was at that time. He goes, I'm just trying to find information about this. I understand you guys got a call from the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. And he said the guy just kind of hesitated and kind of looked down and like he was thinking. And he goes, I don't remember anything like that. He goes, really? You didn't get a call like that? No. Okay. Then they had a little more small talk and he left, said, thank you very much. And down the hall, went to Harvey Weathers' office, had some conversation. And Harvey said, well, we got that call. And they said, blah, 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 blah. And he said to him about that point, he says, well, you might find it interesting. I was just down in such and such office. And he said that he didn't know anything about that. And Glenn told me, Harvey said, well, look, I'm not going to lie for anybody. We got that call. I've talked to Harvey just last year again, just to connect with him again. I didn't realize he was still alive. And like a lot of guys do that are retired like that, they've got a system down there at the Capitol where they'll hire people like that are known and competent. But Oklahoma City Police Department also got a call. Now, here's one that's everything's controversial, right? Let's go back down here real quick. There is the slide on the paramedics that I just mentioned. And I'm going to mention a couple of other things because look at her testimony, number 14. She says, I'm stating that within the first 20 minutes that I was seen, I saw at least ATF on the south side of the building in clean black jumpsuits. She's also the one that said, they found the the bomb on the gas line. The one where she said, oh my God, there were people that you work with in there. And he said, no, we weren't in there today. But then I had call me about Ernest Istook. And this is about, actually it was the state fair time in 1996. And what had happened leading up to that, didn't even know anything about this story of these guys or anything, but they were deputy reserve officers and they would work, among other things, the fair, and they would work together. They were friends. And they said they were watching what was going on in the press that year that went by, year plus, and watching what the FBI did and how the case developed. And they thought they were going to do the right thing. And they had their reasons for maybe not talking about certain things and this, that, and the other. And he said they became leery of the federal government really doing a full open investigation. So they said, here's our story. We're on the northwest corner of the Murrah building perimeter. Our job, along with other people like that, were to keep people out so you wouldn't have just people walking around and getting stuff or taking pictures or whatever. So here comes Ernest and Lana Tyree, an attorney here in Oklahoma City for a long time, had some notoriety. They get out and go up to this about where these guys were. She's taking pictures, and they immediately stop her. No pictures, can't take pictures. She goes, well, Congressman is took, blah, blah, blah. And, just want to take some pictures of the building. Well, don't get any people's faces in it. No people in the pictures, etc. So they kind of go off about 30 feet from each other. One of them, David Kokendorfer, is shoulder to shoulder with Istuk talking to him. Lana Tyree's about 30 feet away, shoulder to shoulder with the other guy talking to him. And as the other guy's talking to Istuk, and he's got a hat on that's like a highway patrol smoky hat. It's a uniform one. Both of them do. They're saying, yeah, how terrible this was, blah, blah, blah. And then Istuk says at one point, he goes, yeah, we had information on April 9th that a radical Islamic group was going to make an attempt, some words that make an attempt to bomb a building. And Kokendorfer looks over at him and goes, excuse me, sir, like that. And he goes, yeah, we had information on the 9th. And he goes, well, then Istuk looked at him and said, aren't you highway patrol? And he said, no, I'm deputy reserve officer. And Istuk didn't say hi, bye, or anything, just walked away and walked over to the others. He obviously knew he had said too much to somebody he wished he hadn't said it to. You know what? I apologize. I'm going to have to take another break. Can you let me do that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
I wish we could get, his audio sometimes clips out and I can't really hear what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, it's just mind blowing, Jenny, to have a guy like Charles get together, that whole group, do that entire investigation, which is what we'd want. Where's everybody else in this deal? It's so crazy that you have all these other stories, all these other rabbit trails. They all seem pretty valid. And we're just supposed to buy the narrative, the official story, which that's what towards the end, I want to ask Charles, we're just supposed to buy that a fertilizer truck pulled up there and demolished an entire building. Give me a break.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like there was definitely, because I've read so many things over the course of the time since this happened. It sounds to me like the ATF and the FBI had some kind of operation that they were running, and probably out of Elohim City, with the skinheads. And they, like Charles said, they were running something and let it get too far. Hey, Charles, there were a couple of, can you give me the link to the book or to the report so that I can put this up?
I don't know if I can do it. It's on Amazon. If you just look up, or you could go to, I guess, my website, charleskey.com, and get
okay, I'll go pull that up.
Yeah.
So, and then Dorn said, was the Oklahoma City office investigating, had evidence and important documents on the Clintons?
Well, and that's another rumor, is that there were stuff in that building, the Whitewater, what have you, that they wanted to get rid of. I've never really felt very strongly about that, because to me, it doesn't make sense to blow up a building to get rid of documents. Another thing about that, by the way, is that in that late afternoon on the day of the bombing, and it's all well documented, articles and everything, they stopped the investigation for a good, I think it was an hour and a half or longer, while agents and other federal government employees went all over the city, not just in that immediate area, but everywhere, to pick up all the paper laying around. They wanted to get all the documents that had been blown out of there. So they were, on one hand, you could justify that, but on the other hand, it makes you wonder. Finish the Istuk deal. So Lana Tyree's over there. The other guy's talking to Lana Tyree. She says exactly the same thing. Well, Congressman Istuk said blah, 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 blah. So They wanted to come and talk to us. We interviewed them. I mean, and when we interviewed people, we learned from experts from the very beginning, experienced law enforcement people and others. What do you say and what do you not say? I mean, you already, if you've lived long enough, you know that kind of stuff anyway. But we didn't. We did professional interviews, and we had others that were professionals, like private investigators and others that worked with us. These people gave video, audio, and written after these two guys. And we said, well, what do you guys want to do? And they said, well, we think people deserve to know this. And, you know, how do you want to get it out to them? They said, well, we think there ought to be a press conference. We were kind of surprised at that. We said, well, you know, if you have a press conference, this is what it's going to look like and blah, blah, blah. They said, well, and they decided that we let them drive this. We had that press conference down at the site, at the tree. And it was a big deal. Every media covered it in the state except the Daily Oklahoman. The next day, nothing in their paper. And one of the private investigators that worked for us was up in my office at the Capitol the next morning. And Dinah Baldwin, which was assigned to me in the bombing committee, came walking in. He was PO'd at her. He jumped, ripped her butt, and she was feeling some heat from him. She goes, well, all I'll say is I submitted an article. He goes, oh, you submitted an article, but they wouldn't, so your, you know, people won't, your bosses wouldn't run it or whatever. That's all I'm going to say. Had another reporter for the Oklahoma, the other one that was kind of assigned, named Judy Coltman or something like that, that went to high school, called me that we talked from time to time, and he would talk to her because they grew up in high school together. He goes, you'll find this interesting. He goes, I was talking to her and I said to her, Judy, why do you guys always write negative articles on Key and said some comment like that? She goes, well, Tom, I can't write anything about him if it's not negative. They'll change the title or they'll edit it a little bit. Anyway, whatever that's worth. More prior knowledge. The bomb squad being at the site, both in front of the Murrah building and the next block immediately south, which was the federal building, widely reported and seen by many, put in employee newsletters of the different county agencies down there. You see one on there called Pat Carter. Pat Carter was a reporter. I think he's still around, and he was a photographer for a lot of his career. He has stated that he was down there and he witnessed the bomb squad truck was down there. And also he also said he saw a bunch of, quote, I think he used the word ninja ATF agents in black outfits, and they're dusty or anything like that, like they'd been in the bombing.
Before the bombing or after the bombing?
After. Now, speaking of before the bombing, there are stories. Yeah, this is probably a good place to tell this one. The stories about, you guys will remember Jerry Bonin from KTOK was around forever.
Yeah, he still is.
Yeah, and he's still around, I understand. So talk to Jerry, talk to Brad Edwards and Glenn Wilburn. We were keeping each other informed and collaborating. And there were people that were meeting, that were talking to Brad and Jerry Bonin about an alleged meeting of Tim McVeigh with some ATF and or FBI folks the night before downtown at the McDonald's is down there right off Western. Yeah. And supposedly there was a video of it. So that's a rumor. So I'm gonna set that period. Next paragraph. Now, I start getting some calls at some point in the course of this investigation. I think it was started in 96 and went on from time to time into 97. And this guy I called him the friend. The story's called The Friend. So a guy calls me up. He's got a real unique voice. I always said if I ever ran across him again, I'd recognize him. And he always called me from what sounded like a payphone outside a busy street. You can just hear the car shoom going by. And he called up and goes, Representative Key? Yep. I don't know, I forget how it all started, but he's saying there's this video. We've got a video of McVeigh meeting with them, blah, 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 blah. We want to get it to somebody. We want to make sure it actually gets outed, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. How we together to get it. pushing for the close. Let's get this thing. And so long story short, I probably had 2 or 3 more phone calls with him. And there's no question they were just trying to bait me or us, any of us. Found out in the course of that, the same guy was calling Brad Edwards, telling him the same story. And Brad was, of course, chomping at the bit, would love to get a video like that. And et cetera, et cetera. And then at the last minute, they were trying to get us to come out and say, the press was talking to me all the time. So I said, well, yeah, and there's a video that blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah? Prove it, and then you can never prove it. That's what they were trying to do. So it was an interesting little experience. Plus, there is look at the one called U.S. staff member. This one I didn't talk about very much until the last half a dozen years, probably, because this staff member was a staff member for one of our congressmen in Durant. And so I mentioned earlier that I could write a book on the crazies. I had a person that came in and would leave me. This was not a crazy person, the one I'm telling now. Would leave a piece of paper that was typed out, and it said various things about, not just about the bombing, but also about some other political things that were going on. And it was signed Dove, D-O-V-E. So I come into the office one day after lunch. I see Leslie, my secretary. I see this. I said, hey, have you ever seen this lady? Because it was the second or third one that I've gotten. And I was particularly interested because it sounded very competent the way it was written. And she goes, I just saw her one time when I was coming back from lunch. She slipped a piece of paper like that under her door, and I, didn't have a chance to interface with her. And I said to Leslie what I've always told her before we had this deal: if you have people like this, tell them that I have to meet face to face and talk to them. But I can't use the information unless I can actually interview them. We do it confidentially and all that kind of stuff. And to my surprise, in a very short period of time, like a week, this lady had come back and agreed to meet with me. She was a registered nurse, about 40-ish, very competent person. Her brother worked for Congressman Jim Inhofe when he was a congressman, and was at the office in Durant. She told me, she goes, look, our family gets together all the time, for holidays and then birthdays and you name it. And the brother will talk about stuff. And he talked about the bombing and et cetera, et cetera. I said, well, would you see if he will meet with me? And I thought, well, that'll never happen. But it actually did. And set up a meeting. I drove all the way down there. I drove down with this other investigator I referred to named Roger. I was actually going to record the call secretly. And I had this little micro thing. We were sitting outside the office waiting for him. And he came in and he goes, just you, Representative Key, not the other guy. So he came in, he asked me if I was recording right off the bat. So I said, I confessed that I was, and I took the thing out, and then we had a conversation. A lot of things talked about there. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the bottom line is he said he was having a conversation. He interfaced with lots of people. He's having a conversation with an assistant ATF person, and the other one was an assistant FBI. Or now I'm forgetting if it was FBI or DOJ, but it doesn't matter, assistant. And they were talking about multiple things, and the bombing came up. And one of the guys said to him, they said, look, another one of those, just like this. They said, look, the genesis of the bombing was a fake sting operation that was concocted right after Waco because of ATF almost being axed from the tree because of Waco. So they came up with a fake sting operation to make them look good. And obviously it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. So that's a pretty big statement right there. Jeffrey Broyles, he was an inmate, but he gave an affidavit that he was being transported through downtown Oklahoma City, like right after the bombing or right before, I forget. And he heard agents over talking about, like a prior knowledge situation. Yeah, I'll stop there for a moment. Anybody have any questions?
Well, there were a couple. We've already seen that one. Okay, so I guess not anymore. Here's the book. Let me pull this in so people can get it.
Well, Charles, how many slides do you have? Do you think we're going to need to do a part 2, Jenny?
Oh, I don't know. We need to find out.
There's quite a few more, and you could spend another good hour on this, actually, tell you the truth. If you guys want to do it, I'm happy to do it for y'all, but it's up to you.
Well, I'd want to run through all of it, Jenny, but I know we're already at 2 hours, and I know I have to go here in just a minute, but I sure want to be on. So I don't know if you want to, do a part 2 with Charles to finish all that kind of in depth, because I think it's important, because no one else is doing anything, on the bombing in the depth of like what you did, Charles. And I think, we can't just let that go. In my opinion, we have to keep hammering these people no matter what.
Yeah. The thing that always comes back to me with anything, not just the bombing, but the bombing, especially a case like the bombing, and we can look at recent times, other things like this, is how we trust them so much and we just buy whatever they say and do.
Yes.
And that's bad. I mean, I know you guys know this, and listeners do pretty much. That is just so bad for us, we the people. We're just, gosh, it's like tossing a toss-up, It's an easy.
Well, and I kind of want to stop there and just say this too. A lot of the people that I've talked to about this over the years, they feel like it's in some way insensitive to the families of people who died or were in the bombing. Like, I had friends who were in the Water Resources Board at the time. And so they were involved in it as well, because the Water Resources Board was across the alleyway from the Murrah building. And they feel like if you really dig into it and you talk about it in other terms other than the narrative that we've been given right now, then it's somehow insensitive, or somehow it sullies the memory of the dead. And I don't agree with that at all, because the people who died in a horrific thing that everybody agrees was awful. But why would we not want to know exactly what happened? And like you said, we traditionally, I think it stopped since COVID for a lot of people. I think COVID really kind of did it for a lot of people. But up until that point, I do believe, and I grew up with this, the narrative that government knows best. Well, it's the government. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the government, and people just basically said that. And I think if you go back and you read any kind of history, like the kind that Michael turned me on to, which was another one that killed me, The Killing of Uncle Sam, which we've tried to get people to read that book for forever. And you realize that the government didn't even start off on the right foot in the first place. And then it's just kind of gone downhill from there. And all it's become is a protection racket for the people involved in government who are hurting the people who think government is okay. Yeah. And so I think that's the bottom line and where we need to get in general. So I don't think there's anything. I think we can only learn from this, and I don't think it hurts anybody to learn.
Yeah, well, I would agree, Jenny, and I would go even a step further myself and say, I think it's a slap in the face to all those families to just say, hey, a fertilizer truck, a Ryder truck with fertilizer was parked out here, and that's what blew everybody to hell. I mean, I think that is an absolute slap in the face that the Oklahoma government is going to go along with whatever the feds say in that deal just to say, yeah, that's how it happened. I mean, I think that is the ultimate travesty when it comes down to this deal, is to believe that a guy that Tim McVeigh just loaded up a Ryder truck with a bunch of fertilizer, went and parked it outside of a building, and it just annihilated the entire building.
Yeah, we have an obligation, those of us that say and claim to believe in the truth and champion it. We have a obligation to tell people either that don't know it or people that don't want to know it, to tell them the truth anyway. And I would say we need to do it in a respectful way and competent way and all that kind of stuff too. But they need to hear that. Withholding it from people that it might make a big difference to in terms of their health, their safety. Well, decisions they make in the future is one of the worst things you could do. People need to know stuff, and especially things like this.
Absolutely. And if the whole narrative was changed just to keep the federal government from being sued for a sting operation that went awry, I mean, that's what's insulting to the families, not the truth. So there were several comments, and then we're just going to go ahead and wind it up for today. And I'll work with Charles to get us back on. Dorn was laughing and saying, will you peek through your window blinds to make sure we don't have a van parked outside? And Valerie says, I've had to click out a few times for a phone call. Did he talk about the African-American officer that found the undetonated military explosives in the building shortly after the explosion?
Yeah, you really ought to make sure you have it back, because, I mean, there's so many stories that are not a part of this presentation, the PowerPoint.
Okay, so Valerie, when we have him back, we'll talk about that. Salome says, hurrah, we have to have the truth. Thank you, Charles. Lisa says we will do a part 2. Boy, if that doesn't make your blood boil, I never bought the narrative. We deserve the truth to avoid being victims again. Well, and the victims deserve the truth. Yeah. Exactly what an insult to families. The government says should be our first red flag and a definite call to dig deeper. And I think if we come away from anything with what we'll call part 1 here, it would be that if this show is dedicated to anything, it's just truth. And the government doesn't have that. And I don't believe they do anymore. And I don't believe they really want to or care to anymore, but that's just my perspective. Charles, thank you for being with us today. And like I said, I'll give you a buzz back. We'll get you set up to do a part 2 and finish that out. But thank you for being on with us today. And I hope you have a happy Independence Day.
You too. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
All right. We've enjoyed having you too, and we'll get back with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
So I wanted to pull in the
and I made a note, Jenny. We kind of left off on slide 18 of Charles' stuff.
Good. If you keep that note, I did want to put this up so people that if they want to go buy the book, you can. The final report, it is on Amazon. You can get it through there. Charles does have a website. It's charleskey.com, but I don't think you can buy it. I couldn't find a way to buy it on the website, so you'll need to go to Amazon. He just has a link to Amazon to buy it. So that's where it is. If you'd like to go and buy it, is on Amazon.
Yeah. And so what's that? What did that say? Did that say it's 500 something pages? Is that what that said?
Oh shoot! It's shocking for today. It wiped out my my tab for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, I thank God for Charles, just because I think it'd probably be so easy for him to just quit or say, that's enough. I had enough. Everybody's blocking me at every place. I mean, I thank God he just went through, continued to go through, wrote the book, did all the investigations, was in front of the media, never stopped, even to this day, still going and doing it, because I think we deserve the truth. We deserve to know who did what, why they did it. And I tell you, I have another.
And who's covering it up?
Yeah. Who's the architect of the cover up? How much did the Governor Keating know? Was he overridden by the feds? Who was really controlling that narrative? We need to know that, at the end of the day, because it's just, God, so infuriating.
Well, because they'll do it to us again. And,
yeah.
Reagan said, trust but verify. But at this point in time, and I've said this on this program numerous times, that I start at verify.
Yeah.
I just blow past the truth part and go to verify.
Yeah.
And then here's another point from Dorn. It was the beginning of the homegrown terrorist narrative to label certain people against government activities. And you know what, Dorn, that is probably, I know that Charles would probably agree with that. And that is because if you look at it, the next thing was Ruby Ridge, right? after this. And so it just ended up kind of being a thing. And it's kind of like once the government screws up, then they just double down on screwing up and use it for other purposes. I mean, to get at American citizens. So
well, and it's a way to strike fear into the public to pass legislation to get things to where you can do more surveillance, you can have more control, you can move into that grid of 1984 because of things, in my opinion, like the Oklahoma City bombing that was 100% allowed to happen. Even the whole narrative that, hey, we knew about it, this and that, someone still put those bombs inside the building itself. Someone still did that. So whether they allowed it to happen, they put bombs inside that building that blew up.
Yes. I mean, yes. And Lisa says distrust verifying is impossible. And I almost tend to think that that's true. Oh, and Valerie, this is another problem. Create the problem, then offer the solution. That's what we've said about this dumb school choice thing in the first place. Well, the government screwed up public education. So their solution to fixing it is more government control. So, I mean, and pretending that you get your own money back, whatever that is, it's ridiculous. And I just think that until we change the narrative for the older people out there to believe the government is your friend, and we change the narrative for younger people to believe that you can do something about it, because right now, I mean, they just go, and now it doesn't work. Who cares? It doesn't matter what we do. It's never going to get any better. Right. So, I mean, which is just completely wrong. And we've got to change that too. All right. Well, we need to get off of here because it has been a very, very long show. And we're so sorry about all the internet issues at the beginning. I don't know what went on there. Well, that's a lie. I'm sure I probably have some idea. Anyway, so we're sorry about that. And what's going to happen on Friday?
Independence Day.
Independence Day, not 4th of July. Independence from Britain Day. And you and I are not going to be here. We're taking the day off.
Right.
So I'm going to pull up one of the older shows and put it up for everybody. And I'm not sure which one it'll be. So, hey, tune in to see which one it is. Could be exciting. So, anything else that I'm trying to think of?
I just in the vein of the OKC bombing, I think it's important that we don't just let this go away. We don't just let the government win the narrative in this, because there's so many smoking guns. There's so many other witnesses. There's so much other information that guys like Charles has, and things that happen that, we're going to probably go into pretty good detail in the next one that we do. But if we can blow this back open again, then it's going to open the door to just how bad the government really is and what they really think about us. And that's why I just don't want to give up on the Oklahoma City bombing, because there's so many loopholes in that deal that's just, just crazy.
And the other things, I'm reading that book. What's her, Lindsay Webb, right? Isn't that what her name is? Whitney Webb.
Yeah.
On Epstein. And that's just another one where so many people are involved in the web, and it's all, about government, and it's just awful. Don't forget to go to libertyoklahoma.org to learn more about the Oklahoma Liberty Conference that's coming up November 13th through the 15th. I'm working on that website. We're getting it there. Tickets are going to go on sale August 1st. We'll have that information out to you, but just put that on your calendar and remember, because with every room, you get 2 free tickets to the water park. So there you go. Have a safe, no holding black cats in your hands, right?
Hold your hand.
Don't do that. That was nice. Earl's daughter says, I thank you guys for having the difficult talks. We can handle the truth. That's what we're here for. That's what we're trying to do. That's the whole point of this program. So thank you so much. We appreciate that, Earl's daughter. And you guys have a safe and wonderful Independence Day. Michael and I will see you again live on Wednesday. And I'll have to check to see who's on. Give me 1 second. Oh, we're going to have a very interesting, a guy named Tony Vigia, who was an Oklahoma native, moved to Chicago, was in Chicago during COVID and got red pilled. And he's going to come on the program and talk to us about what it's like to go from being a liberal to more of a conservative type person. So I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation to hear. So tune in next Wednesday, and then we'll see you again then. So have a great weekend and a great Independence Day. Thanks for tuning in.